All right, good afternoon, everybody that's coming in. We're going to give it a couple of minutes as people come in and find their seats. All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give it 2 more minutes while folks join us. Okay, we'll give it about another 30 seconds and let people get settled, and then we will get kicked off. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is the final session of our 2021 Corrections Technology Association Summit. Thank you for joining us. And I appreciate the fact that you've all made time this afternoon or this evening, depending on where you might be. This was our very first virtual conference. It's very different than what we've done in the past. And I really want to thank you for making the time. It's hard when you're in your office or in your normal work location, even if you're not in your office at this point, with people expecting you to be doing your job while you're also attending a conference. So thank you for hanging in there with us. I know it's been different, but overall, I think it's gone very, very well. I want to thank all of the attendees that have joined today, and especially the folks that are here for the first time, and invite you to come back to our future CTA conferences as we move back to an in-person model next year. I really want to thank the exhibitors that we had with us this year. They helped us pull this thing off and put it together. And I really want to thank them for their patience and their willingness to work with us in this different format. And frankly, I hope that everybody had a great time interacting with your peers and the vendors on the exhibitor floor. I also want to thank the presenters. Pulling this off from different areas of the world, literally, to do some of these presentations. We had a couple of presenters from Europe who were doing this fairly late in the evening for their presentation. And so the pandemic has definitely changed it for us, but it gave us some capability that we may not have had to have some people do a presentation and may not have been able to be in person. So again, thank you very much. As we look at the virtual summit that we've just concluded, I want to give you a little bit of information about how it went from our perspective. While it's different than in person, overall, we think it went fairly well. We stubbed our toes a couple of times, but here's some numbers that are essentially draft at this point. This is information through last night. We don't have the numbers on today's attendance yet, but I wanted to throw this up just to give you an idea of how it went. Overall, our registration for attendees or jurisdictional attendees at the conference was 245. That's actually double what we normally have. So the pandemic helped us in that instance. We've been working really hard to increase attendance in the last few years. But because there was no entry cost this year, people didn't have to request out-of-state travel trips for their government members. There were a bunch of barriers that were removed because it was virtual. So our attendance was actually up quite a bit from previous years. In the workshops themselves, normally when we're in person, the rooms that we have for those sessions will hold 40, 50 people. Gets to be a lot of people in one of those rooms. We were more than double that in our workshops. And again, this is average in the first 5 workshops that we did across the first 2 days of the conference. And so overall, that went very well. Those workshops, by the way, have been recorded. They will continue to be available. We're working out the mechanism, but we think it's going to be on the CTA TV YouTube channel via our website. So be watching for that. If there are any sessions that you missed or would like to see again because of the content, we'll get those published as quickly as we can. As far as interacting with our vendor partners, over the course of the first 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, we had 2,700 visits to our vendor booths. Of those, 825 unique visits. That means, for example, one person went back to some of those booths multiple times, which is a good thing for interactions. At those vendor booths, there were about 1,200 documents downloaded and 1,200 videos that were viewed at those booths. So we did have quite a bit of interaction. We also had the chat channels. We don't have any measurement for that right now, but I know there was some pretty good interaction between folks and our vendor partners on the floor. One of the other things we did this year is we continued to use Guidebook. And that Guidebook app that you have on your portable device, it's more valuable at an in-person conference because it gives you floor plans of the venue. It gives you other functionality that this year wasn't important because we weren't traveling around a site. We were doing this virtually. And the functionality between Guidebook and vFairs overlapped a little bit. So Guidebook wasn't as important this year as it is when we're in person. We are going to continue to use Guidebook as we move forward. And our post-event survey is in Guidebook. So if you have not downloaded that, please do. The first menu item when you open it up now is the post-event survey. And we're looking for feedback about this event, planning for next year. We're already starting the process of figuring out how we're going to do things and what we're going to do next year. So please provide us that feedback. And you're also welcome to send information direct to any of the board members if you have other thoughts that are not captured in that survey. Now, one of the things we do at our annual conference every year is an election process. So this year we had 3 board positions that were open. We had president-elect, treasurer, and secretary. We used an electronic format this year. Again, we normally do that in person at the registration desk when we're face-to-face. But we used an electronic system this year that actually worked so well, we're going to consider using that again in the future. Was really easy to tally the votes. We made sure that we had the right people voting. We didn't have multiple votes from different jurisdictions or the same jurisdiction. And this year we had an 81% participation level. In other words, the electors from the jurisdictions, 81% of them cast votes, which is a pretty good turnout even when we're in person. So we appreciate everybody casting your votes. And without further ado, let me fill in the rest of this. And our newly elected board members coming into the board. President-elect will be Zach Allen from the Virginia DOC. That means he will be president for the 2023 conference that we'll be holding. Our brand new treasurer starting today is Christina Regal from the Indiana DOC, and our secretary. Our first board member from an international flavor is Simon Bonk. I want to thank Simon for being willing to participate in the CTA board at that level, and thank him again for being on one of the panels that presented earlier this week. It was a great presentation. So those are your new board positions. We will be appointing some other folks to positions. For example, Zach Allen is vacating a seat, and so one of Jerry's tasks will be to fill in behind Zach, and we will be getting that process going for the next conference here shortly. The other election results are bylaw changes. So we had 4 items that were on the ballot this year. All 4 items passed, and I'll just run through those really quickly. I'm not going to read the entire body of the text, but first item was essentially removing some duties from the secretary, and we moved those actually down to one of the other positions. So the secretary is no longer responsible for the website, but our marketing director is. Second item, the marketing and technology director positions were established and called out specifically. The marketing director already existed, but it was just called director. It was not called marketing director. So that was really a name change. And then establishing permanently the technology director. That is one that we established last year on a temporary basis. Actually pre-pandemic is when we established that. And it proved very useful. And I want to thank Phil for actually jumping into that role and really helping us pull off this virtual conference. He had a group that actually selected the platform and helped with the configuration. It was kind of the technical producer behind all of this. So send Phil a virtual beer for pulling all this together, because we really appreciate what he did for us. All right, moving into some awards. This is one that we normally give on Sunday night when we are first getting together. We have one of our business sponsors who's now achieved 15 successive years with us. GTL has joined an elite club of folks you see at the bottom of the slide there. We want to thank GTL for making that 15-year mark and for our other 15-year sponsors. And we even have one entity that's been with us for 20 years. So thank you for all of these foundational members of the band, for lack of a better way to say it. They've done great things with us, and they help us do this each and every year and really help us bring this conference to you. So thank you to GTL and all of the other sponsors listed on the slide. As far as other awards, Lucas Herring is receiving this year's President's Award. He is stepping out of his past president role effective today, but he's been with us in that level of position at the board for 4 years, and before that as a track chair and one of the vital members of your CTA leadership organization. So we want to say thank you to Lucas. He worked very hard. He was the instigator behind our election this year. So the fact that that went so smoothly is due in large part to Lucas and all the work that he put behind that. So thank you, Lucas, and congratulations. Other leadership awards, we have a couple of former presidents who have moved on and are now acting still in our industry and helping to move our organization forward and corrections technology in general. So thank you to both Aaron Garner and Rick Davis for all that they've done with our organization. And in our period since our last conference, they have moved into private industry, and they're continuing to double down on their efforts to support us. So thank you to Aaron and Rick. And Aaron, actually, as he transitioned out, continued to act as a member of our board. So I do want to thank him for that extended service, as he was no longer a jurisdictional member, but became part of our vendor partner pool. Now, a couple of special call outs. Joyce Taylor and John Doherty. These are in essence, founding members of the band. They have been part of the CTA leadership team for many, many years, and I really want to thank them. A large reason that CTA is what it is because of these two. Their tireless efforts, their knowledge. They are our sage advisors, essentially, for me, for Jerry, for Lucas, for all of us that are relatively new members of the board. We go back and ask Joyce and John why things happen and why they're done the way they are, and they are just a wealth of knowledge. So thank you very much to both of you. Joyce has recently retired from Arkansas, and so she is passing the torch on her secretary position that she's been holding, and John has taken on a new role in Montana and is still working with the corrections organization, but has a much broader scope now. But again, we couldn't be here today if it wasn't for them and everything that they've done for us. So thank you, Joyce and John. We really, really appreciate that. And I want to extend a thanks to the entire CTA board and staff. These folks worked tirelessly for the last 2 years in the midst of a pandemic and huge pressure on them in their own areas, their own jurisdictions, their own companies. These folks came together and helped plan this virtual conference, which is something that none of us had done when we started this process. So this is put on by a bunch of people that had maybe attended a virtual conference or a virtual meeting, but managed to pull this together and overall put in a huge amount of hours talking about how to set this up and how to facilitate this process. The amount of work behind an event like this is much more than I ever imagined as a participant. So thank you to everybody listed on this slide. I really, really appreciate everything you've done to help pull this off. One of the other things that I want to do is remember the folks that have been in our roles before us. So we have a list of past presidents going back to our first conference, which was in 2000. At that point, we didn't call it the president, we called it the co-chair. But from 2001 on, we've had presidents, and you'll recognize a lot of these names. There are folks on here that still participate in the industry and are doing amazing things. So thank you to all of our predecessors who've really given us some direction and support and really put us on a good path for moving forward. I also want to recognize a couple of folks in particular. Ed Raper of Shelby County, Tennessee, passed away early in 2020. And we did not get a chance to acknowledge that in a conference at 2020. So I do want to call that out and extend our condolences to Ed's family. He was a very dynamic person and kind of the larger than life person at our events. And we're going to miss having Ed with us at our conferences into the future. We also, I want to take a second to really just honor all of our fallen comrades across the industry, whether it's our correctional officers, our IT staff. Through the pandemic, we've all suffered losses in our jurisdictions of one sort or another. And a lot of times we have not been able to celebrate those folks and really give them the respect that they deserve because we have not been able to get together. We see the light at the end of the tunnel now, so whether it's in our personal lives or our professional lives, hopefully we can get back to normal and celebrate some of those folks in the manner that we would like to. But I do want to acknowledge not only Ed, but all of the folks in our organizations, in your personal families, in your companies who may have succumbed either to the virus or to other issues. But just acknowledge that, and our thoughts are with everybody who lost somebody in this period of time. So with that, we also had a number of our past presidents that were in attendance through this week. So thank you to everybody who was here in whatever role you happen to be in. Normally we would call them up or recognize them in person, have them stand in the room, but we obviously can't do that today. So thank all of you who are in attendance. And now, without any further ado, this is my last official act as president. I'm going to have a margarita as soon as we're done here, and maybe even before, if I could find a way to do it. But I want to introduce you to your incoming president. I now officially am taking the mantle of past president, and we'll take second chair to Jerry moving forward. Jerry, I'm looking forward to working with you for the next year and working towards our next conference. So my pleasure to introduce you to President, CTA President for 2022, Jerry Brineker.
Thank you, Russ, and hello again, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed all the sessions and great content provided to you in this first ever virtual summit. There's been a lot of great interaction and thought-provoking discussion. I also want to encourage you to take the time to complete that end of summit survey and guidebook, and let us know how this experience has been for you and how we can continue improving in the future. As I take up mantle of CTA President officially, I'd just like to take a moment to share with all of you what CTA means to me. So I started working for the New Mexico Corrections Department as a project manager in 2008. And my very first project was the modernization of our legacy offender management system. My background was IT, but at that time, I had no government experience, no corrections exposure of any kind. I had managed my share of system implementations. I remember at the time saying that an OMS implementation was a whole nother animal. But in actuality and in retrospect, it was more like the entire zoo. So I was trying to wrap my hands around and my head around corrections business processes to better understand the project I was under. And I came across some technical specifications for offender management that were written and published by CTA. Over the next few months, these specs pretty much became my constant companion. I cannot emphasize strongly enough how important that documentation was for my induction into corrections and the facilitation of my learning processes of the ins and outs of offender management. It was a few years later that I was able to attend a CTA summit for the first time in Phoenix in 2013, which proved to be another revelation for me. To meet with IT professionals and discuss technology issues that, while similar to other governmental agencies in some respects, are often vastly different from a public safety and correctional perspective. And this was very exciting to me. You all understand all the unique challenges of the corrections domain, and I've learned and continue to learn from all of you. Now, I never would have been able to guess in the spring of 2008, when I spent all of those hours reading those specifications, that I would one day be in the role of president of that same prestigious and very important association. I'm both honored and humbled to work alongside all of the intelligent, talented individuals that make up CTA, the members of the board and the track chairs who freely commit so much of their time, but all of you as well, corrections practitioners and vendor partners, the passion you have for what you do, and your willingness to share knowledge with your colleagues. You are the foundation of CTA. Russ, it's been really great working with you in your presidential role over the past 2 years. I'm excited to continue to work with the CTA board and the opportunity to work with the newest board members in their new roles. Zach Allen as president-elect, Christina Regal, treasurer, and Simon Bonk, secretary. Next year, we fully intend to hold an in-person summit, and I hope you'll join me at the Hilton at the Ballpark in St. Louis next June. Be looking for more information in the coming months as we start planning for that event. And as you can see, we already have a save the date postcard on the screen here. And if you're a practitioner and would like to volunteer with CTA, we do have openings for track chairs, AKA session hosts for the 2022 summit. You can either contact myself or President-elect Zach Allen, either through the guidebook app or the CTA website, correctionstech.org, if you're interested. As the last year and a half has underscored, we don't know what the future holds, but I'm really excited to move toward it with all of you. And with that, I will officially end the award ceremony and close the 2021 summit. Be safe, be well, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, everybody.